Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Gold Hoops and God podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Guerra. This is season 2, and we are doing interviews. So I'm very excited today. I'm going to be interviewing the amazing Brenda Vaca. Brenda is a longtime friend. She currently is working on an amazing new project with her publishing house called Riot of Roses. She's had many, many lives, so I know she has a lot of wisdom to share with us. It'll be a lot of fun. We have known each other for many years, so I'm super excited to be able to interview her and share her with you all. Hi, Brenda.
Hi, Lauren. Hi, Dr. G. Great to be here in your studio. I'm so excited to do this and to see your beautiful face on camera. And thank you for inviting me to be a part of this interview series.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Brenda.
Of course.
So, Brenda and I were both from LA, like LA. Born and raised. And so we have a lot in common as far as like our backgrounds and histories and things. And we actually met each other initially in Berkeley. So we both attended the Graduate Theological Union and we had class together. And if I'm not mistaken, the class that we had together was about Job and the book of
Yes,
Job. And it so happened that our professor, shout out to Dr. Jeffrey Kwan,
Dr. Kwan.
he was going through many trials and tribulations that semester. It was unreal for us as students. Like we're like, he's really like our real life Job right now. It was crazy. And so seminary had a lot of twists and turns, a lot of incredible people that I got to meet there. But that's how I initially met Brenda. So do you want to kind of take over about your Bay Area chapter to begin to start us off?
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, I think we were trying to remember right before we started the video what year we met. And I think it was 2006, 2005,
Sounds like right. Yeah.
2006.
Yeah.
I remember being one of very few Latinas at the Graduate Theological Union.
Mhm.
My specific school was Pacific School of Religion,
Mhm. Mhm.
interdenominational, not very diverse. And then I remember seeing you in a very small, tiny classroom about the Book of Job, which
Right.
was so intense, but really amazing to meet you. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
I lived in the Bay for like 20 years. Did my
Wow.
undergraduate there, and then I did
Mhm.
a double master's at the GTU. And then I was a pastor for like over a decade when
Yeah.
we first were getting to know each other. So
Yes.
many
Yes.
lifetimes ago.
Many lifetimes ago, and that's definitely something that I want to touch upon today with you. So, um, let's kind of start off talking first about identity. I think that, as you mentioned, like there's not a lot of Latinas who do graduate work, and just that identity of being Mexican American, being from LA. If you can share a little bit about that, and then we'll kind of move into what it means to be a Latina pastor, and then all of the many things that you've done since that time period.
Absolutely. Yeah, so identity, I've for as since I was a young person,
Hmm.
I would say like teens, um, I've always identified as Chicana, Chicana with
Mm,
an X. And
mhm,
I
mhm.
used to go like this, Chicana with an X.
Oh,
My,
yeah,
my
yeah.
brother, my brother is an alum of UC Berkeley. I
Mm,
totally followed him up there, and I
cool.
remember he was taking Chicano studies classes, and he would send me the books, or he would bring back the books after his semester.
Perfect.
So he's a teacher, teaches at Franklin.
Excellent. Well done,
Yeah,
brother. Well done.
well done, brother. So he's always been the person in my life that would assign books to me, like, hey, check this out. And
I love
he'd
it.
give me reading lists in the summertime, and he did that with his Chicano studies classes. So I always had this understanding of myself. At a fairly young age, at formative years as a
Mm.
Chicana, went to Berkeley, even more so, like that identity
Oh, yeah.
just became more and more part
Cemented.
of who I
Mhm,
am.
mhm.
And then I ended up in seminary, and there was no Chicanas. There was no one identifying as Chicana when I first got there.
Right.
So became Latina, right? Like that was kind of the word that was
Ah,
put upon
the names, the
me, the
labels.
name,
Yep,
the
yep,
labels,
yep, 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 yep.
exactly.
Mhm,
Um, and then I became a pastor. I joined a particular very white denomination.
mhm,
Very structured denomination, United Methodist Church, and the
mhm.
word that they love to use is Hispanic,
Oh,
which, you
which is
know,
loaded itself. Yes, yes, yes,
super
yes.
loaded. All the Chicanos and
Wow.
Chicanas I know would say like, "Who's panic?" Like there's that always that retort.
Oh, wow.
But that was the category that was
Amazing.
available. But I remember I would push back and people would push back on it. And there was just always a lot of tension
Mhm,
around
mhm,
identity. But
mhm.
Chicana's an identity that I completely connect with.
I
And
love it. Mm,
it's home to me. It's again part of those formative years. It's political identity. For me, it's
absolutely.
also a creative identity. And it's ultimately an identity that connects me to my indigenous roots.
Mhm.
Indigenous roots that I've had to recover, right, over the
Yes,
years,
yes,
and
yes, yes.
continuously I'm still excavating,
Mhm,
trying to figure out like, yeah, where are my people from? Who,
mhm,
they're not just this thing called Hispanic. They're not
mhm,
just this thing,
mhm,
you know,
mhm.
this identity that others want to put on us. So currently still excavating,
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
very comfortable with the word Chicana, with that
I love it.
identification. Yeah,
I love it. Yeah, it is like a process of recovering roots, uncovering roots, and it's true. Each of those labels has a significant meaning or bent to it, if you will, right?
right.
Using Latina versus Latinx
Hmm.
versus Latine versus pardon, Hispanic. They each kind of symbolize something different, right?
Absolutely.
Versus someone who, for example, like most often I try to say, oh, I'm Guatemalan Ecuadorian, right? I
Hmm.
kind of like specify, I'm not, because yeah, that's the thing. It's like the word Hispanic or Latino, they're helpful to a degree, but then it becomes like a catch-all. It becomes like this
Exactly.
hodgepodge melting pot where the nuances and the differences
Hmm.
between the Latin American countries, Caribbean countries, etc., it just gets mishmashed all together.
Exactly.
And so it's an issue. And
Right.
I completely understand. So it's interesting, like similarly, although my background is a little bit different, reading, for example, like Gloria Anzaldúa, Sandra
Hmm.
Cisneros, all of these key figures in Chicana literature, I was like, oh wow, this is amazing. Like
Right.
now this is connecting, right? Like now the
Exactly.
dots are connecting. Now it's starting to make sense, right?
Hmm.
And so funny enough, I'm sure folks know, like I teach at UCLA in the Chicanx and Central American Studies department. So that, you know, has been transformative for me, to
Right.
be a professor in that space, to talk with students, having them share, the ups and downs, right? The struggles with
Hmm.
identity. A lot of them have come to Los Angeles from other cities, other states, etc. So it's a bit of a learning curve, to be in a new
Right.
area and to be in a new space. But it's amazing. Yeah, it's fantastic. I think ethnic studies is so powerful and so
Yes.
empowering. And it's fascinating how so many of my students will be like, how come I never heard of this? How come I never heard of this? How
Right.
come I was never shown this history? How come no one told me?
Hmm.
Right? So for example, one of the books that I usually include in my courses, it's called Central American Forgotten History. I think is
Hmm.
Central American History, Forgotten History. It's by Aviva Chomsky. I think it's Chomsky's daughter, if
Hmm.
I'm not mistaken. Noam Chomsky's daughter.
Hmm.
And she really goes in,
Wow.
giving the nitty gritty, especially like U.S. involvement, right? Which is
Right. Hmm.
very uncomfortable. Uncomfortable as a U.S. born,
Yes.
Guatemalan. It's very uncomfortable to find out the history, right?
Right.
But it's one of those things like it cannot be unseen. Like once you know,
Absolutely.
it cannot be unseen. So
Hmm.
yeah, I appreciate what you've shared. And it's true, like it's very much a journey. So I would love to hear, as far as like, let's see. So I'm going to kind of use the terms like external and internal, right? So we
Hmm.
have kind of like the external shifts that you made,
Hmm.
right? From Europe, as you mentioned, you were a pastor for many years,
Right.
and then you got into real estate.
Yes, I did.
Los Angeles real estate. Oh my God, right? Selling Hollywood, right? Very exciting.
It was rough. It was rough.
You're going to tell me about it. And then now you are running a publishing house and doing all these amazing events and working with authors. You're a poet yourself, right? You perform
Hmm.
and share all this beautiful poetry. So from the outside, right? From the outside, someone might be like, what on earth? Like, what is Brenda? Who is Brenda, right? Like, what is Brenda all about?
Yeah.
Many hats, many, many hats. And so
So many hats.
I'm super curious if you can share with us a little
Hmm.
bit as far as like how those came to be, those shifts
Hmm.
came to be, and like what was going on, internally. Obviously, like you're a person of faith, spiritually connected. Um, I would love, yeah, I would love if you can kind of, let's see,
Absolutely.
like
Yeah.
guide us through that. It'd be, yeah,
Yeah,
it's
and
exciting.
let me know if I'm going way off on tangents.
Go for it,
So
go for
I
it.
wrote some notes a little bit so I can keep myself focused because it has been quite a journey.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
remember I left the ministry in 2015, and
Hmm.
it's interesting that you bring up Chomsky and the untold story in Central America. So I
Hmm.
actually went, one of my final trips as a pastor was looking at root causes of migration
Oh
in
wow.
Central America specifically. It was
Yep.
right after, I think it was like the spring, summer of like all the so-called unaccompanied minors that were showing up at
Oh
the US-Mexico
yeah.
border. And
Yeah.
everyone was like, how could the
Freaking
parents
out.
and well, what
Yeah.
is happening? But there was just like a hemorrhage, right, of flow
Yep.
of young people in particular.
Yes.
So I went with a group, Interfaith Movement for Human Integrity, and it was a big group of us. It was Christians, it was Roman Catholics, it was Muslim, it was people that were fairly secular but maybe connected in some way to spiritual
Hmm.
tradition. And we went to Honduras, Guatemala. We were supposed to go
Hmm.
to El Salvador, but there was a strike and it was just not safe for us to leave the airport. So we were stuck at the airport
Wow.
for
Oh
maybe
my
like
gosh.
18 hours. And then we were also
Whoa.
in Chiapas.
Oh
And
wow. That's
and we did,
intense.
it was really intense.
That's a trip, you know,
It was,
like that is a
yes.
life-changing trip. Like already, without even telling the details, like, oh yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah, and it
Wow.
was just 10 days. It was 10 days, but
Wow.
it completely,
Intense.
in an early biography as a writer,
Mm.
I always name that because it changed the course of my life. Because I
Mm.
was in the ministry, I was in it to win it, I
Right.
was on trajectory toward
Right.
leadership,
Right.
and and then I left the ministry right after I came back from Central America because what I heard there, we visited a lot of different community groups, community like church groups, faith groups, and these were across the different traditions, Christian traditions,
Hmm.
in Honduras, Guatemala, Chiapas, and I would just hear these heartbreaking stories of not just U.S. involvement, but U.S. church involvement in some of the atrocities that were committed during Central American wars.
Mm.
And then just learning even more history about there's a, and I've still been doing research, and it's hard to find information about
Hmm.
this thing called the Cincinnati Plan. It was
Mm.
during the Mexican Revolution. Cincinnati Plan happened in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Hmm.
Many of the mainline traditions, Christian traditions, got together and basically cut Latin America like a pie. Methodists go here, Lutherans go there, and it was kind of like a
Wow.
battle against the Catholic Church to a certain
Domination. Yeah.
degree,
Yeah.
right?
Wow.
Territory, power control territory.
Wow.
And I just felt, I mean, I had always felt, I was raised in a white church, which
Mm.
is was unusual as a Chicana. And that's another whole story. But my parents, half of my family is Pentecostal, half is Roman Catholic, and my
Oh,
parents raised
interesting.
us in a white class church in the neighborhood. It
Mm.
had like a vacation Bible study
Hmm.
program, and
Hmm.
we got
Hmm.
bussed in. So, and that was the church
Wow.
we were raised in. So I always felt like in and out of the
Hmm.
tradition, but I fell in love with the story, with the Jesus story. I fell in love with the stories of the prophets. I
Mm.
just fell in. I'm a story person. I'm a book person.
Mm.
So that's just
Hmm.
always been part of my upbringing.
Yeah.
So then
Wow.
hearing how the church had just and I had known on like the historical superficial
Surface
book
level.
level
Hmm. Hmm.
about
Hmm.
colonization and conquest and all of these atrocities, the Chicano studies traditions that I had studied,
Right.
speak of that. But then this was like in real time, people that had lived, first accounts of just these horrifying stories coming out of Central America, Honduras and Guatemala in particular. And it just broke my heart. And I
Yeah.
thought to myself, I had already been struggling in the church. I always struggle with authority.
Mm.
I get in trouble because I don't follow protocol very well.
Same girl.
And
Same.
damn it, right. And damn it, I'm not a Hispanic, So all these things,
Yeah.
I was kind of screwed
It's a
out the
lot.
door to a certain
Hmm.
degree,
Hmm.
and put on a pedestal and then also chained and roped. It felt like, the collar
Wow.
sometimes felt like a gag around my throat.
Ooh.
There was other times where it was very
Intense.
liberating, like,
Mm.
the decolonized story of Christ to me is very liberating.
Yeah.
You know, liberation theology, so empowering.
Yes. Mhm.
Mujerista theology,
Mhm.
sign me up,
Mhm.
you know.
Mhm. Mhm.
But then these other levels were just so devastating, and I couldn't reconcile it. My
Wow. I'm getting
anxiety
chills.
went through the roof. I
Whew.
was like, I cannot operate and live. This is not
I
what I
can't do
signed up
this.
for. Live this
Yeah.
way. So I gave up everything. I surrendered. I initially took a leave. People went ahead and gossiped about why I left, you
As they
know,
do. As they do.
as they do.
No matter what. Like, come on.
Yeah, and then they
As I sip tea. That was
that was some
the
tea, girl.
chismosos.
The
Yeah.
teas, the chismosos and the chismosas, they were
Yep.
like, and I was just left alone. Like, some
Wow.
people reached out to
Like
me, mostly
abandoned, kind of like she's
abandoned,
done.
yeah,
Wow.
mostly laity. Some pastor friends would stay in
Jeez.
touch, but very much like distance. The distance was there. The bishop, who I will not name, but if you know, you know, essentially
Mm-hmm.
blackballed me and said that I left the church entirely, which I had not done. But it just kind of
Presenting
closed
a
the
different
door,
story. Yeah.
told a different story. And that's a pattern
Jeez.
that she does, that she has. And of course, she happens to be Chicana herself. So
Oh.
if you know, you really know now.
Yo, you know exactly who that is. Yeah. I'm so
So
sorry, friend.
it
That
was
is
it was
so
heartbreaking.
just like
Yeah.
heartbreaking on so many levels.
It was when I was praying about it because it was a struggle to leave.
Sure.
The word I kept hearing was Exodus,
Woo!
and yeah,
Wow.
over and over. And
We know that story. It's
we know
into
that
the
story.
wilderness we go. Like, oh
Into the
my God.
wilderness. Yeah.
Amazing. Wow. That's so deep. That's so deep.
And
Wow.
I was binging on Bob Marley, um, and
Freedom song, girl. You needed that
freedom
freedom
song,
song.
redemption song, like all
Redemption.
of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I felt carried out. I felt guided out, just
Mm,
the same way I felt
yeah.
guided into the ministry, and that's a whole other story for a whole other time.
Sure.
I
Yeah.
felt guided out by
Out.
spirit
Time
of the
was done. Yeah.
church.
Yeah.
But
Whew.
it was hard. It took me to like
Yeah.
2 years to fully surrender. And even
Mm.
when I
To make peace with
surrendered my
it.
ordination, I wrote a
Wow.
letter. Apparently, I wrote it incorrectly, and they had to correct my language on how to say, I fucking quit. Can I say that on this podcast? I'm sorry.
Yes. Oh my God.
So that was interesting. So that to me was just like, oh, yes, it's time to go. It's
Oh my
been time.
God.
So, ooh, I forgot I was at the library cussing up a storm.
That's okay.
So then I needed to work. And I
Mhm.
actually, in the hard times, I actually did Lyft. I drove for Lyft. So I
Yeah,
was a
I
cabbie.
remember you. I can't.
And
You've
it's
done
not
it
on my,
all, friend.
I've done
You've
it
done
all,
it
girl.
all.
And I collected even more stories. And
Oh yeah.
my last ministry job, I did a lot of traveling. I was a missionary. I hate to say that, but because it's such an ugly word. But I was a missionary with a
Mm,
lot of baggage, right?
mm,
And it handled my wanderlust because when you travel a lot for work, like I was
yeah,
traveling out of state 2 to 3 times a month,
mm,
and so driving around with Lyft kind of helped me process a lot of things, right?
yeah, yeah.
And I'm in LA again. I had moved from the Bay Area at that point to LA
Mhm.
and started taking real estate classes. And I don't know how I ended up. I feel like it might have been a fortune cookie.
Mm. You're so funny.
I think
What?
it was a fortune cookie. Yeah. And I was watching a lot of those like rehab shows, the Rehabilitate Your
Oh my
Home kind of,
God.
which I love
Property
those.
Brothers and things. Oh no. Oh my. So you're telling me HGTV
HGTV on
and
the air.
Panda Express or something were the ones that
Yes. So I was
I
doing
cannot.
that.
I cannot.
And then I got a freaking
Brother, you're
fortune
too much.
cookie. And again, I'm like always at looking for signs,
Yes,
signs,
signs and synchronicities.
synchronicities,
Yeah,
guidance from
yeah,
spirit. And
yeah,
I took that as a sign. And actually, I believe it was. I
yeah.
got my license.
Why not?
My first transaction was a double. I represented sellers and I found them their new home,
Oh
and I
wow,
was the top producer that month, and I
I
was
love it.
totally brand new.
I
And
love
people
it.
were giving me the side eye left. My
Of
broker loved
course,
me.
like this new girl. Of course. How's a new girl like sweeping up in here? Like, of course, yeah. The
Yeah.
haters gonna hate, Brenda.
The haters gonna
We're
hate.
seeing the pattern. We're seeing the
Right.
pattern. The hater's gonna hate. Yeah, no matter what you do.
The hater's gonna hate, and you still gotta do you. My second
Yeah.
transaction was a $1 million home in Studio City, and
Oh,
it
yeah.
was a retired pastor friend of mine.
Funny enough, huh?
His wife's family, who were savers forever and ever, they just her parents that were just constantly saving money. That's how they were able to get that home,
Wow.
because she was a teacher and he was a preacher, so they
Right.
didn't
They were not
have a
rolling in
huge.
dough.
They were
Yeah.
not rolling in dough, but they
Yeah.
inherited, and then that was a gift to me,
How
as well,
cool.
because it helped sustain my transition out of ministry, and I did that for 4 years, and
Hmm.
then the pandemic hit,
Oh, yep.
and I was already kind of
The
on my
Rona.
way.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Hmm.
the Rona hit. I was already, I think, on my way out of real estate.
Your house
I was
ministry.
gonna
You were
say
gonna say ministry.
ministry.
That's it's kind of a different ministry, yeah,
It
but
was.
yeah.
I think the skills that I learned dealing with people, families, negotiating difficult situations in the ministry totally helped me when I was doing the
Good.
real estate
Totally.
practice.
Hmm.
But I also know that, real estate is 100% commission. You do not get paid until you get a paycheck,
So,
which
hmm.
made me hustle because
Yeah. Yeah.
a person's got to eat and pay
Hustle
bills.
and motivate. Yep.
You got to hustle and motivate. And so
Yep.
I completely learned that hustle
Mm.
culture from the real estate.
Hmm.
And then, but I remember my last year that I had my license, I remembered like this writing wish I had. And I had it in my calendar. I still have it to this day. Every Thursday, I put it in my calendar to write.
Good for
And a
you.
lot of times it would ding and I wouldn't pick up a pen. I wouldn't write,
Ooh,
you know.
that's a
But
sore subject, friend, but keep going.
and it's been on my alarm for probably a decade now, that
Mhm,
I get this
mhm.
alarm
Sounds about right.
every Thursday morning. And I'm
Yep.
like, dang, did I pick up my pen? But I started writing again. I started gathering the poems in particular. That's been my default, that I would have. Like, I would find poems in sermons. I was finding
Mm.
poems in my real estate
Wow,
calendar. So I
love
think I
it.
even recorded poems at open houses just for fun,
I love
like
it.
on my Instagram, like early Instagram page. So that was always part of my life. I've been
Mhm.
writing poetry since a long time, maybe junior high.
Really?
I've been
Wow.
writing little stories since I could put sentences together.
Aw.
So that was creeping up, and when the pandemic hit, I was like, what the heck am I waiting for? What am I waiting for? So then,
Mhm,
and I
mhm.
felt also like my parents are my favorite storytellers, even though sometimes I'm like, yeah, yeah, basta. Like, it's too much. I don't want to know this part. But they raised us with oral storytelling from
Oral
their
tradition. Yeah,
families, or
yeah,
the
yeah. That's
oral
part of our
tradition.
culture for sure. Mhm,
So it was
mhm,
also important to me to like put a book in their hand in this lifetime,
mm. It's beautiful.
because of that influence. So
Fantastic.
I hustled. I put a book together. I was part of a program called Community Literature Initiative.
Mm.
I gathered my bollitos, I call them, my little poems together,
Aw.
and put it in a manuscript, and then
So cool.
started looking for a publisher.
It's
Started
so
looking for a
cool.
publisher, and I got a contract from a publishing house, and it wasn't negotiable. And because I had a real estate background, like everything's negotiable, right?
Mhm, mhm.
And they wouldn't negotiate, so I was
Oh,
like,
interesting.
I'm gonna wait then. But then I saw a friend of mine who was in my cohort, my writing cohort,
Mhm.
Diosa X. She
Oh, yeah, yeah.
self-published.
Mhm,
Yeah, you
mhm, mhm.
probably have seen me tag
I
her,
met her.
but
Yeah, I met
you
Diosa
met
once or
her.
twice. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I have since published Diosa,
It's so cool.
but I saw her do it, and I was like, I can do it too.
I can do it. Good for
I can do it
you.
too. I was 44, 45 at the time. So like that critical year, that 44 year, that's the year the pandemic hit, and 44 to me is a big number, an important number.
Mm,
So, and it's a builder's number. So I decided to
I love it.
not just self-publish, but to set up a publishing house, because
So
I
cool.
wanted to end up in a library. And here I am in a library doing an interview with you
Ooh, full
about this
circle.
crazy
Mhm.
journey. Yeah.
That's not a
So
coincidence. I don't think I Anymore, I don't believe in coincidences. I think that all of it is really kind of divinely guided,
Hmm.
and it's a matter of us paying attention,
Right.
because there's
Absolutely.
always going to be the naysayers like, oh, no, no, that just happened to be, oh, you just happened to
Right.
run into her coffee. Oh, right. No, that was not an accident.
Right.
So I don't think it's a mistake that you're in the library today for, as we're doing the
Agree.
interview. Yeah.
Yeah, I 100%
I
agree.
love
Yeah,
it.
I love libraries. I don't actually get to this library often enough.
Mhm, mhm.
But yeah, no, you're right. It's like the perfect place to have this conversation.
Yeah, um I see libraries in a lot of ways as sacred spaces, actually,
Hmm.
because of the knowledge that they contain. As you know, like so much of our academic lives, we're researching, right? Pulling books, looking up things,
Hmm.
or we're sitting there trying to writing,
Right.
studying. It is a really important space, I think. And the
Absolutely.
public libraries, shout out to them because they really provide so many resources
Hmm.
for our cities and counties. And I don't think that the librarians get enough credit for all the things that they do and all the things that they know.
Exactly.
But I love libraries. And circling back for a second to the book question. So
Hmm.
it's funny, like I graduated with with a doctoral program. I finished up a while ago. We won't say exactly which year, but it's been a minute. And during the pandemic, for a lot of reasons, as many people did, I had a lot of time to think, right? I had a lot of time to think and reflect and things like that. And I really had this moment, sort of a discernment of like, okay, do you want to write the book or do you not want to write the book? Because just for background for people, writing an academic book, the impetus is usually because you are either applying for tenure track positions or you're in a tenure track positions, and there is a that term, publish or perish. It's a thing, right?
It's a thing. Hmm.
It's a thing. And so I was trying to decide, like, do I want to write something? Am I pressuring myself, just because? Is it external pressure? I was trying to like discern like what's really going on, what's really going on. And I came to conclusions like, no, I need to write something
Hmm.
for myself, right? Like as like a life goal and a life mission, I feel like it's incomplete. Like
Right.
I have to publish something, you
Hmm.
know? And so that has stayed with me. And funny enough, earlier today I signed up to be a part of this like writing group check-in, and so it's like that desire is still there. In other words, that's a long way of saying like the desire is still there,
Hmm.
and really like you have to answer the call. You
Yes.
know what I mean? Like your alarm, like it will keep dinging every day, every day until you answer, right?
Right.
Yeah, so it's really fascinating when you again like when you start paying attention, you're like, yeah, I need to
Yeah.
do this, right?
Absolutely.
Um,
For me, it also was affecting like my anxiety. Like
sure.
if I don't pay attention to my writing practice, I'm a more anxious person, more anxious,
Mhm.
destabilized person.
Mhm.
Creators have to create, you know. So whether it's like even a quick little poem, you're writing a couple of pages,
Yes,
one of the mentors I know he talks about read every day, write every day, and it's a
love it.
great practice. And I don't always reach that goal, but it happens more often than not.
I love it.
And I definitely feel like my most natural self when I am creating words, right, or putting
Mhm.
words together.
Mhm. 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 Yeah, I think for me, I've mentioned this before. Like I struggle with perfectionism, and so writing is a process. Like that was one of the biggest lessons, right? Like writing is a process. Having several edits is normal. Like it's
Right.
okay, right? Like it's okay to have several drafts. It's okay to edit. It's okay to pivot, right? That's okay.
Hmm.
It's part of the process. And so I think for me, like just getting very comfortable with that has been, part of my growth, part of my challenge, I guess you could say.
Hmm.
But yeah, that's
It's
exciting.
still calling you. It's still calling you. I can tell. I know you, so
It is. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it still is. And it's so
yeah.
funny. Like I definitely, without giving too much away, I definitely have shifted like my original idea a little bit. Um, to where now I think I'm gonna be coming at the same concept but from a different angle.
Hmm.
And now I think it is going to be much more Central American focused, Central America / Central American diaspora.
Hmm.
Um, And I think it'll be good. I think it'll
I
be
think it's
good.
going to be beautiful. Like the
Thank
voices,
you.
when I went to Central America, I completely fell in love. And for
Yeah.
me, I think that like the indigenous spirit that lived in me
Yeah.
really woke up
Mm,
in the waters in Honduras. Like
mhm.
that,
I
I
love it.
just, I was like baptized new again into this
Mm,
other creature, right,
mm.
of who we have always been. So I think, the
Yeah.
strange travels of a Chicana in Mayan
Yeah.
community, like I have nothing but love for Central America,
Yeah.
and we need more stories.
It's true,
100%.
and that's a big part of it, right? Is like the absence of Central American voices. We're
Hmm.
just now
Hmm.
starting, Central American studies, Central American voices, scholars, things like that. And so, yeah, I don't know. It's deep, right? I feel like it would be a very cool way to honor my family, like
Yes.
especially like my mom's side, because that's my Guatemalan side.
Hmm.
My grandpa, he was a tailor, and he risked his
Hmm.
life, immigrated, came to Los Angeles, worked hard, saved up money, and then brought my grandmother and then my two eldest aunts, and then they built their family expanded here in LA. But yeah, just thinking about him and thinking about their very, very humble beginnings,
Hmm.
it's like, and then his granddaughter has a PhD. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, you rest in peace. They've passed on
Yeah.
now, but my grandparents have passed on both sides. But even still, I'm like, I think it would be really cool. I think it'd be really amazing. So
I
that's something
absolutely
that
agree.
is in the
Y-
works.
Absolutely. I'm so glad to hear that it's in the works, and I'll kind of I didn't touch too much about like the publishing, but I will say that my publishing house, what's important to me and what's
Mhm.
important, I think, to the writers that I've worked with so far is we're publishing historically silenced voices and narratives.
Ooh, yeah.
So, and you're right, like we're not always hearing the voices de Guatemala or Guatemala
Hmm.
America. We're not always hearing them. We're not always
Not at
seeing
all.
them on our bookshelves. Where are
Right.
they in the libraries? Are we studying them at colleges, universities? So and
Hmm.
we need to be documenting our stories. We're also just
Yeah.
super historically undocumented, not just our political status, right, or our citizen status,
Undocumented
but like
in
our
every way.
stories.
Hmm.
Right.
Hmm.
And we have
Hmm.
stories and we come from
Oh
very
yeah.
powerful oral storytelling
Traditions. Yeah.
traditions. And so
Yeah.
for me, like that is a passion project is
I love it.
documenting these stories, not just my own stories, but also creating spaces for others to document their stories. So I like to tell people, have ISBNs. I have ISBNs. Like who wants an ISBN? Let's get
I love
and
it.
and I also can, I vibe with the writers. A lot of them do zines or very
Hmm.
untraditional publishing where
Hmm.
they hate ISBNs. They're like, whatever,
Oh,
we don't
funny.
need to
That's
be.
good.
And I can vibe with that too. But damn it, I want to be in the libraries. That to me is so important because that's where I was as a youngster.
Yes.
And a lot of like people in my family, we were raised in the library. So to me, that's
Hmm.
important and critical. It's like meet our people where they are.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's true. Like, having ways of documenting our stories, keeping track of them, like sharing our stories. It's so important because, yeah, the voices are very few and far between, I think about like, so for like in theology, right? It was very apparent to me, the initial scholarship that I was reading, it was like, okay, it was predominantly Cuban
Hmm.
American, Mexican American,
Hmm.
and Puerto Rican, right?
Hmm.
Like I was like, where
Where
where are the
are we?
Ecuadorians? Where are the Hondurans? Where are the Costa Ricans? Right. It, right. And there are now a handful, right? Like a couple, a
Right.
few, but again, few and far between. And so
Hmm.
I think it's important. I think that we're sort of like just scratching the surface of
Hmm.
this process. So I
Absolutely.
agree with you.
And I don't think it's that there's few of us. I think
Mm,
that the publishing houses haven't given us space.
uh-huh.
So
That's
for
true.
me, I'm like, let's break the canon. We're
Yeah.
going to break the canon. They don't want to let us into their canon. I'm going to
Make our
explode the
own. We're
canon
gonna
then.
yeah.
I'm going to use your canon and I'm going to explode the canon. So,
Yeah.
because I believe our storytellers are there. It's like we,
Yes,
again, we are natural storytelling people.
we are.
So,
Yeah.
so many indigenous cultures are. So it's just about finding each other, documenting our stories, lifting each other up,
Yes.
instead
Yes.
of shooting each other down. 100%.
Amen. Exactly. That's so true. And I wanted to circle back for a second when you were mentioning about the letter that you had to write to your denomination, right? Saying that
Yeah.
you're rescinded, your position as a
Hmm.
pastor and things like that. I immediately thought of Sor Juana.
Mm.
I immediately had a vision of Sor Juana, yo la peor de todas, like in blood, where she's like signing away, saying like, I regret everything I've written, da 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 da.
Oh, yeah.
It's heartbreaking. I was like, no, don't sign that. you
Así
know,
es, Sor.
there's something very, I don't know. It's just like the between the church and like this signing of letters and proclamations. And I don't know. There's something there that's very, very fascinating to me. It's super interesting. And very painful, I would say. Like, I think it's very painful to be forced into that position,
Yes.
for different reasons.
Yeah.
But
Because it was very
yeah.
much like I don't want to say it was a spiritual divorce because I don't think it was
Mm,
a religious divorce because it's
hmm.
a religious organization.
Right.
I didn't divorce my spirituality. I feel like my
Exactly. You have your
spirituality
faith.
has expanded and
Mhm.
grown and bloomed over time and deepened as well. But
Yes.
it was so painful, like being Pastor Brenda or Reverenda Brenda or
Yeah.
Pastor B for so long and having really beautiful experiences too with the
Sure. Yeah.
communities that I served and I worked
Research, yeah.
with. The institution was awful. I'll just say it like that. And having to deal with them as I was leaving, which was a very painful process,
Mhm.
was abusive to a certain degree.
Mm,
And regrettable, I think, on their part. I don't
yeah.
regret leaving. And I didn't rescind my faith. I think I did to this day.
Mm.
But I know who I am and I know who I
Yeah,
belong to and to whom the community
exactly.
that I'm connected with. But yeah, writing
Exactly.
that letter, I remember hitting send. And then I think I think I had Pandora Radio back then. I put it on and some Smiths breakup song came on. And
Oh
I
my
can't
god.
remember which one. So it was very LA. It was, I
Oh
can't
my
remember. Oh
god.
shoot. I wish I could remember. And when we post it, I probably will find it and I'll tag the song. How
I
about
love
that?
it. I love it. Oh my
But it
gosh, that's
was
very intense, friend. Yeah, I
crazy
mean, I can't
Morrissey's.
imagine. I cannot imagine. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing
Yeah.
all of that. And so, let's see. I'll let you kind of choose your own adventure here. One of the things that we've talked about or touched on a little bit is indigeneity. So this sense of like how do we reconnect? So for both of us, we grew up in the United States, and so like what are the ways in which you have reconnected to your indigenous past, indigenous roots? So there's that aspect of it. And or we can also talk about growing up, like childhood, in terms of like what would you tell your younger self if you could go back in time?
Mm-hmm.
And what advice would you give to young Brenda, let's say like teen Brenda? What advice would you give her for this
Oof.
journey? We can cover both, we can cover either,
Yeah.
or it's up to you.
I'll do a little bit of both. I'll start with your
I
first
love it.
question, the recovery of our indigeneity. So as I mentioned, I was in Honduras when there was just like a deep awakening within
Mm,
me, and it was already always there. Like I had participated in sweat lodges, specifically when I was in seminary.
mm,
I feel like I received vision when I was
mm,
a vision when I participated in a sweat lodge in particular, one in particular. But I think my indigeneity continues to be deepened and rooted in community. So a
mm,
friend of mine in particular hosts a very small circle, very intimate circle, and so connecting with other like-minded mujeres in particular. Sometimes it's just even a couple of us
exactly. Mm,
remembering who we are, remembering our ancestors,
mm.
calling the corners, it's full moon ceremony. Like
Mhm.
tonight, Pisces is in, the full moon is
Oh
in
yeah.
Pisces.
Oh, you're a Pisces too. I
I'm a
love it. Oh my god.
Pisces. So
Yay.
like the emotions are like,
Oh
you know,
yeah.
it's turbulent right now. But I think that That's what it is. What's interesting is I have my mom looks very indigenous, yet on
Mm.
her birth certificate it says white. My
My
dad,
mom too. They put white
yeah,
for her
isn't that
identity, even though both of her
crazy?
parents are Guatemalan, like literally from Guatemala.
Yeah,
Wild. Yeah.
it's so wild, but
Yeah.
erasure, right? So it's
Mhm.
about like, and it's funny that erasure poetry is a thing, which I love, like the
Mm.
blackout poetry, but I
Oh
feel like we're
yes.
peeling away. It's like recovery
Yes.
of identity. So paying attention more to like stories of my antepasados, right?
Mhm.
Be it
Mhm.
my grandfathers, my grandmothers in particular, because both my grandmothers were very indigenous looking women.
Mm.
And in fact, that's a vision that I had when I was in a sweat lodge. I
Wow.
was in the sweat lodge. I think I was down to Tonantzin, like face in the earth, down, trying to stay cool. And I saw myself in a circle of indigenous women,
Wow.
which was so powerful. And I saw
Amazing.
Jesus, a very brown Jesus, very Palestinian looking Jewish Jesus,
Beautiful.
sitting outside the lodge on a rock, just like straight chilling, as Jesus knew how to do.
Jesus was straight chilling. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh my gosh. That's
So for me,
incredible.
that
What a
was
beautiful vision. That's
it
really
was,
intense.
and I felt
Beautiful.
very
Wow.
reconciled in that moment, and that vision
Mm.
continues to carry me because I can't deny who I am. I can't
Yeah,
deny how I was raised.
correct. Mhm.
And I believe that Jesus was indigenous to his land
Mhm.
and to his
Mhm.
people, you
Mhm.
know.
Mhm.
So that I think that's how I recover and it continues, right? It's continuing. And in terms of what I would tell young Brenda, be it teenage Brenda or like little Brenda, I would say, Mija, everyone's self-conscious. Everyone in this room is
Wow.
self-conscious. Like, don't waste
Don't
any
be
time
fooled.
being self-conscious.
Mhm.
Be
Mhm.
yourself, your beautiful self, your full self, and keep writing. Don't
Mm.
believe that your writing doesn't have merit. Your writing
Mhm.
is powerful, and you
Mhm.
were
Mhm.
created to do that. So I would say probably a combination of that, or maybe give her a 3-point sermon. I don't know, you know. But it
I
would
love it.
definitely have to do with self-consciousness because I think I spent,
Yes.
and I think a lot of young people, we spend, or even adults, we spend time being self-conscious.
We
And
waste too much
now
time. Yes.
too
Yes.
much time in our
Yes.
heads and it holds us back and it held
Yes.
me back for a long time.
Yes.
And at this point I'm like not anymore. I'm not holding back. I'm going to be who I am.
Yeah.
I will do my best to be civil to people, but like take me or leave me. Like this is it,
1,000%.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I love what you shared. Yeah, the indigeneity thing is really complex. So like for example, as I mentioned, my mom's side of the family is from Guatemala, and I've been to Guatemala, and indigenous culture in Guatemala is so important,
Hmm.
and indigenous people, the Mayan, etc., are so marginalized and disrespected in
Hmm.
Guatemala that it's almost like my reverence and respect for indigenous people, Mayan people. It's almost like I I I know that my life experience and their life experience, there's no comparison, right? There's totally different worlds, right?
Hmm.
And so it's hard, you know what I mean? Like as much as I want to connect, as much as I like love Mayan culture, being in Guatemala, all those things, I also know the freaking privilege that I've had, again, comparatively, right?
Hmm.
So it's hard. It's hard. I mean, growing up, my grandma would always have, Guatemala is known for like a lot of very colorful, like
Hmm.
fabrics, textiles, handmade, handwoven things like that, the little worry people, all those kind of things. And so I
Hmm.
grew up with all that. My grandmother would wear like a lot of those dresses and things like that.
So beautiful.
And so there's that connection, and I recognize, how very steeped in Roman Catholicism I've been.
Right.
So it's very interesting. It's very
Yeah.
complex, but I agree with you as far as like looking back on childhood, looking back on when we're reflecting on when we were younger. I feel like I've been pretty outspoken, right? I feel like
Hmm.
I've been a pretty outspoken person in general,
Hmm.
but now it's like, oh, I'm unleashed. Like this is like on. Like, like they say, no F's given. Like this is
Right.
it. Like
I
it's
lost all.
on now, right? It's on now. Like I've crossed the 40 threshold. It's on,
Yeah.
and really I keep, especially with my family, I'm like, the only one I answer to is the Lord. Like that's it. Like none of you should say anything to me about anything because the
Right.
only one that I actually care about who has any kind of authority over me and my life is the Lord above, right? That's it.
Right.
Um, and it's funny, like it's kind of funny, because again, I think many of us were raised with this like very traditional kind of patriarchal sense of authority, right? Authority, respect your elders, do this, do that, do this.
Hmm.
And taken to the extreme, it can be very stifling, right? It can be
Right.
very stifling, especially for a young woman of color,
Hmm.
right? Or like just an outspoken woman of color. It's just like
Right.
it butts heads, right? It's like the butting of heads.
Absolutely. Hmm.
Yeah, it's so fascinating.
It can
But
be so painful, and again, and
yeah,
it can be so liberating because, like you said, when you
both
when
ends.
you
Yeah.
get to that stage where you have lost all your F's, and I have lost them about three,
No
four
more to
different
give.
times.
Exactly.
They're so gone. I mean, obviously I care about people that I care about, but like the
Yeah.
opinions, the que dirán,
The
all of that is
chismosos.
just the chismo. I'm like, it's pretty gone. It's not poetry without a little controversy, you know?
True.
So bring
True
it,
story.
you know? And in terms of the church, well, if you lose me, you lose a good thing. No.
And then no, truly, like they did. Like they did not recognize your gifts or recognize the power that you have enough to support you in the right way.
Right. Right. And I'm
And
not
it's
the
a
only
shame.
one. Right. And
Yeah, it's a shame
yeah.
because like not only like the higher ups, if you will, but it's also like the community, right? The people in the pews, the people, in these different, different offices and organizations that are part of the broader church
Hmm.
structure. Like they're all losing out because,
Right.
they just didn't get it. So
Yeah, they
it's
didn't get it.
unfortunate.
And
It's
it's
unfortunate.
and it's absolutely, and it's a pattern of
Yeah.
behavior because I saw it happen
Hmm.
to other people.
Seen it before. Hmm.
Right, whether it was because of like just some people's otherness, right? Like whether
Yes.
it's their race or ethnicity, whether it
Hmm.
was their sexual identity, their gender identity,
Hmm.
people were getting ushered out of their politics. They were getting ushered out of the church a long time, a lot.
Yeah.
And what happened to radical hospitality? That to me always like rubbed the wrong way.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's sad to see, but I also believe in the faithful remnant of the people of God and the people of the
For sure.
Spirit and I often see it happening outside the church walls, you know.
Isn't
So
it
and that
interesting?
motivates me.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting? Like I've said this before. I have several friends that don't practice any particular religion. They do not identify as religious. They're not going to church or anything. But the way they live their lives, right? Their lives are a ministry. The way they help others, the way
Hmm.
they serve, the way they are donating time, donating money, doing a lot, clothing collections for all
Hmm.
those things,
Hmm.
right? To me, I'm like, you're behaving more Christian than a lot of Christians that are
Right.
sitting in the church pews, to be honest.
Hmm.
There's a lot there. You know what I mean? Like it's
Right.
it's complicated. Church is complicated. Christianity is complicated.
So complicated.
And it's true, and it's the same thing, right? Of like, which Jesus, right? Are we
Hmm.
talking about Empire Jesus, blonde,
Hmm.
blue-eyed Empire Jesus? Are we talking about the liberative,
Hmm.
indigenous, feed the poor, clothe the naked Jesus,
Right.
right? And they're two different. I think that they're two different visions a lot of
100%.
times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I vibe with the second one, no doubt.
Yeah. No, I tell my students, I'm like, Jesus said to feed the poor, clothe the naked, visit the imprisoned, not
Hmm.
just like think about them and pray about them. Like there's action involved,
Right.
right? Like there is actual action involved in
Or
being,
deport them or put them in cages, right? Or
or
drop bombs
separate
on
them
them,
from their families
right?
and not have any kind of like tracking or logging system to where these children are completely like lost to
Right.
their families.
Hmm.
We can't. Oh gosh,
Hmm.
it's awful. Yeah, there's a lot. Oh, that actually it all ties together. Seeing what has happened, especially with the the minors, right? The minors, unaccompanied minors, the
Mhm.
refugees, etc. That also has put a fire under me to focus on Central America and focus even
Mhm.
more on Guatemala because
Mhm.
again, if I don't, who will, right? Like if
Right.
I with the expertise and the degree and like
Right.
the as they say like the legitimacy, right? If
Mhm.
I'm not writing about it, who's going to write about it? Who's going to care?
Right.
Unfortunately that's how it is, right? That's kind
Mhm.
of how it is. It's like if you don't give voice to kind of like the plight of your own people, it will continue to be unnoticed or unknown. So,
I heard a poet once say, he said if he Nicaraguan, and
mm,
I think it was his tío that told him, and then he told one of my classrooms I was in. When I was developing my manuscript, his tío said something like, "If you're not writing stuff where you can feel the machete to your neck, you're just writing empty words." And I was all, okay, I think that one was for me.
yeah, that was it. That's
Yeah,
it right there.
because it's a lot of the art that we create, is everything we do is political. We're human. It's always gonna
Mhm.
be political. But
Yep.
when we're speaking out against injustices, when we're giving voice to our reality,
Right.
our other or minoritized or racialized reality, like it's dangerous. It's a dangerous
Mhm.
game.
Yeah,
There's a lot of hate speech out there. So for me, I kind of laughed when I heard that, but I also was like, I could feel
that's
it
real.
right up against this neck right here.
Yeah,
You
that's
know,
real. I mean, and
it's
it's
absolutely important.
there's always a level of danger involved when you're being prophetic.
Hmm. Yes.
There's always a level, ask Martin Luther King Jr.,
Hmm.
ask Oscar Romero, like
Hmm.
they spoke up
Right.
and it cost them their life, right? So I think that is very true. I think that still is the case today that
Hmm.
the people who are most active and vocal and really like pushing the envelope and trying to like make change,
Hmm.
there's enough people out there that don't want to know, they don't want to hear it, and they don't want to change because
Right.
they're very comfortable, right? The status quo, right? Like
Right.
rocking the status quo, it can be dangerous. So that's very powerful. I agree with that 1,000%. Like,
Hmm.
if you don't feel a little nervous,
Yeah.
maybe you need to rethink it. But
Right. It's
yeah,
always a
that's awesome.
confirmation for me when if I'm writing something and I can feel like the heart palpitating a little bit, I'm like, oh, this is important. This is important. And it's funny, because people will read my book, Riot of Roses, and it's very much the Chicana confessional stuff. So you're gonna
Mm,
hear the family stuff, you're gonna hear the relationship, the
right.
brokenheartedness stuff. But there's also like threads of political prophetic language, I would
Hmm.
say, and more to come. So
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
did that as
Hmm.
a strategy, kind of in the tradition of Augustine. When you confess,
I love
no
it.
one can hold
I love it.
anything against you. You could say whatever the hell you want because you've
Yeah.
already said it yourself. So that's kind of
Sorry, you put
how
it all
I
out there.
approached it. I'm put it all
Good for
out
you.
there. I'm going to judge myself first. Believe me, I've been my worst judge and my worst critic and all of that stuff. So, but it's important. There's so much happening in the world. We have to speak
Hmm.
up. If, like you said, if not us, who?
Hmm. Hmm.
Right?
Hmm.
And we have to speak up for people that we can't hear their voices right now. So
Hmm.
many, I'm thinking immediately of people of Palestine,
Yes,
you know.
absolutely.
Forever Central America and Mexico,
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. That's the disheartening thing is that this is not a news story, right? The story of like genocide, marginalization, suffering, violence, like a lot of people in the world have gone through that,
right.
trajectory. Yeah, Central America, like you said, always pretty much.
Hmm.
And right now it's true, like Palestine is totally being obliterated. It's
Hmm.
horrible. And it seems like not much is being done about it.
Right.
And then there's things going on in Sudan and other,
Right.
that we haven't
Congo.
even heard about. Like people have not even like I have not even heard much about it, and that's horrible. Like
Hmm.
there's all kinds of things going on around the world, and it's like, you know, do we turn a blind eye? Like
Right.
what's really going on? It's hard. I don't know, but
And it's overwhelming. It's a lot.
it is.
So
It is. It is. It is.
I
Yeah, like it
always,
was,
mm,
the news what is it called? The news cycle, it's meant to create fear, anxiety, pandemonium, right? That's how
mhm,
the news is not just presented like as informative, it's like sensationalized, right?
right.
And so
Hmm.
it can be overwhelming to try to keep up, to
Right.
try to keep up with like either, the evening news or reading
Right.
articles. Like it's the overwhelm, right?
It
It's
is
very easy to
overwhelming.
feel overwhelming. Yeah.
And especially with like just the internet being what it is and social media, like we weren't as humans, I think, meant to absorb this much information.
A
And
lot.
it's overload. I remember Christmas in particular, Christmas season, because Christmas is
Mm,
still important
yeah,
to me and my family in our life, in our faith life.
sure.
It's always been a beautiful time. But it's also, if you read like the Advent lessons, it's also like you brood of vipers, and that felt very real this
Woo.
year.
Yeah.
The brood of vipers have been very, very
Mm,
busy,
mm,
but it was also just so heartbreaking.
mhm.
The heart of Christ continues to break. And I
Yeah.
think it's going to keep breaking until it breaks open, like the people of God from all of
Until
the
we really wake up.
traditions.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
need to wake up.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. Whew, my goodness, friend.
We can talk on and on about so many things,
There's
Lauren.
so many things. I love it. I love how you like just dropped a little Augustine in there. Uh,
I've been waiting. I was like, where can I drop Augustine?
I
Yes.
love it. I love it. No, I'm definitely an Augustine fan because he was no saint until he became a saint later on.
Right.
Like I always talk about him to my classes or students as like, think of a playboy. Think of a playboy who suddenly had a revelation and
Right.
then he changed course and became devoted to God. And that's with all respect. I appreciate, okay. I appreciate that journey, to be honest.
Yeah.
You know, um, I like I won't call them fallen angels, but I like people who are imperfect and embrace their imperfection.
Hmm. It's
I like that a
real.
lot.
It's our
It's
real
very real.
human journey. And it doesn't happen just once. Like for me, I
Hmm.
feel like there's been that's why I say like my faith is expansive and it
I love that.
deepens. Like it's not just like one and done.
Hmm. Hmm.
I'm not a what are they a microwave meal, right? Where it's like bing and it's done. No, it's like this constantly
Instantly.
evolving yeah, this devolving thing, and I think spirituality is a living thing, and
Hmm.
it's constantly growing and dying and changing.
Right.
When right before I published my book, a butterfly landed like a caterpillar set himself up or herself right at our door, like the threshold of our door.
Oh,
And
really?
yeah, it was so crazy.
That's
And
special. That's
the
beautiful.
chrysalis, like we saw the whole process, and it bloomed and it opened like on, I forget exactly what day it was, but it
What?
was a pivotal day for me and my writing. So I very
Oh,
much, but I saw it disintegrate. And I was like, I know what you're going through, friend. Like
I'm sorry. Yeah.
I too have disintegrated and been made new. And then
Oh,
the same thing happened the next year. I disintegrated again and we grow again. Like it's just this constant cycle of
evolution.
regeneration,
Yeah, the
you
constant
know?
evolution. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
It's true. It's funny. I look back, I'm like, "Ooh, girl, if college me knew what was coming, oh Lord." Like high school me had no idea.
No
College me
idea.
tampoco. Oh no. I have to say, I'm trying to think. I have to say things got most interesting grad school. I think grad school on, it's been a wild, wild ride.
It picked up several notches. Yeah, exactly.
Uh-huh. It kicked that amped up all the way.
And our
Exactly.
frontal lobe was developed at that point. So we were, I think, maybe more aware,
Maybe, yeah.
right?
Mhm.
But still wilding out because we were in our 20s.
Wilding out. Yep, that's accurate. That is accurate. Oh my
Even in the
goodness.
ministry. One can still while out when in the ministry.
Hey, and I have no shame in this. When I was a resident minister at the University of San Francisco, I would go to church. Okay, Mass, Catholic Mass. It's a Jesuit institution. And then I'd go to Church Street, meaning I would go out in the Castro and dance with my
That's
friends.
right. And they would, and I believe there
And
was
it's
like
all
a
good.
club called
And I
Church.
felt
Yeah.
like I felt so content and I felt myself.
Hmm.
Right? Those two were not in conflict. I felt myself. I loved it. I thought it was awesome. And that was I felt like that is so me, right? Like
Hmm.
that is so me to go to church and then go dance with my friends.
The woman
Yeah, it
loves to
was good times.
dance. The
I
woman
do.
loves to
I
dance.
do. I do. I do. It's super fun. Yeah. Well, this was amazing, Brenda. You're
Yeah.
the best. You're a rock star. Let's tell people where can they find you. Tell
Yeah.
them how to find you online, social media. Speaking of social media.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me at I am BrendaVaca on Instagram. You could follow my publishing house at Riot of Roses Publishing on Instagram. We're also on Facebook. You can just search Brenda Vaca. You'll probably see my face there. You could also type in Riot of Roses and find me that way too. You can go directly to my website for the publishing house. It's riotofrosespublishing.com. And then can I show off my little book baby just because
Oh yes.
I'm a proud mama and it
Oh
came,
yes. Absolutely.
I had a hardcover come in the mail yesterday, so I just
I
want to
love it. So
show it
beautiful.
off. Yeah,
Riot of
so
Roses. Her
check
poetry's
out.
so amazing, people. Go pick up a copy. Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for having me, Lauren. I always love chatting
Oh,
with you, and I'm proud of you for doing this podcast.
thank
Way to
you.
go, and keep telling your story. I look forward to the many books that you're going to write.
Oh, thank you so much, friends. So everyone's Brenda Vaca, Riot of Roses Publishing. You can find her online and social media. I'm Dr. G, host of Gold Hoops and God podcast. Please, please, please like, share, and subscribe. You can find me on Instagram, goldhoops_God. And we're also available on YouTube. Season 1 of the podcast is available. Season 2 will be available very soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.